geopolitics is no longer something that happens overseas and is summarized in an intelligence report. It arrives as an employee dispute, protest, a supply chain decision, a government inquiry, a travel concern, or a reputational crisis. Our question this morning is what organizations should do when a distant conflict becomes an immediate operational problem. So, in no more than 45 seconds, for each of you, where does geopolitical risk most directly become an operational issue for your organization or the organizations that you advise? I'm going to start with Teresa.
So thank you to the panel, by the way, for sitting forward, since short people might. I much appreciate that. So for me, it's an everyday thing, right? I'm at the National Press Club, as many of you are familiar with. We support journalism. We do about 2,000 events a year with 250,000 people coming through the door. And literally, you can't imagine every day who the VIPs are, the topics are. It just absolutely changes every single day. On a given week, I might have Senator Sanders, Vice President Pence, Russ Vought, Blanche, HRH Pahlavi, right before the Iran war. So welcome to that little nugget. The catch-22, though, is how do I deal with that, right? Because these are clients that are coming through the door. They bring their own geopolitical risks as they walk through the door. But I represent journalism, which is supposed to be free and open at the exact same time. So it does make things a little bit difficult, and that's for sure. Operation. I'm sorry,
quick.
you have a question? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I wanted to hear what you had to say, Michael. We're going to be.
No, this is good. 45 seconds. This
Got
is just
it.
opening remarks.
Got it.
We're relentless and ruthless here.
I was waiting for you to hit me with
no,
something.
all good. So, David.
Yeah, no, I'll take it a different angle. So NXP Semiconductors, we do manufacturing around the world. We're roughly in about 36 different countries. But for me, geopolitics really hits when it affects people, right? And when it affects people or our business. And that's really where I come into it, is how do we navigate and do business around the world in this crazy world that we're living in every single day, 24-hour news cycle. But when it impacts the people side of it, that's really where we touch.
Great, thank you. You had a couple seconds to spare. RC, you'll make up for that.
I'll do my best. So I work from Bombardier Recreational Products. We make, power sports equipment. Our challenge actually is that almost all of our manufacturing is being done in Mexico, particularly in Juarez. So this is a daily event, whether it is a protest because farmers are shutting down the border, which they did, which caused a lot of fun, or an impact on our supply chain, particularly when we learned that we had a number of critical parts that typically flew through Dubai, but nobody bothered to share that information with us. So when the air corridor got shut down, a number of our manufacturing locations were significantly impacted. This is every day. It's not part-time. It's something that we look at every single day because we have a very extensive supply chain that expands the globe. We're either drawing parts from Asia and other places, or we're doing assembly in places where some folks won't even go to. So that combination means that we have to be kind of monitoring at all times from a very strategic level, as David does, which is a larger view from our personnel, but we also drill way, way down into the logistics down to the road because it can stop us cold when we have a local farmer block a major highway going into Juarez, which has happened on occasion.
Thank you. And Bruce, finally, you're a service provider, you're an advisor. Our other folks are proprietary.
I get to see these companies and many
yes,
more.
and many more. So with that perspective.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, how organizations deal with geopolitics range from geopolitical monitoring theater, where they'll just have kind of a quarterly meeting, and they'll talk about geopolitics and then wait for the next quarterly meeting, whether it's the board or senior executives. The other end of the spectrum, which is the right one, is getting ahead of that curve, understanding, what are the indicators that might affect our business that we want to watch for. But the most critical thing that I see in the successful companies is getting a unified voice in our domain, security, cyber, physical, but also regulatory, legal, everyone to come together and giving one assessment to management around the geopolitical impacts, not 6 or 7, which drives them crazy.
Thank you. So let's put this into an operational context. I'm going to give a scenario. and then ask some questions. So controversial overseas event triggers heated employee activism inside your organization. A demonstration is beginning to form outside one of your principal facilities. Social media posts accuse the company of supporting one side of the conflict. Employees are demanding that leadership make a public statement about it. At the same time, people identifying themselves as federal authorities arrive at the site seeking access, information, and cooperation. Senior leadership wants to know what's happening, whether anyone is at risk, what the company should say, and who's in charge. So now you're in the first hour of this. Teresa, what tells you that this has moved from political expression or background noise into an operational issue requiring your action?
So everything that you just said, right? This is DC. I've got protests at my door. I literally just had this scenario with HRH Pavlavi coming 3 days before the Iran war to speak about why he should be the next leader. And just by hosting him, that's a tacit, people see that as a tacit endorsement of the position. Within that first hour, right, I mean, I had 3-letter agencies standing at my door. There was a concern for the IRGC, whether they're going to be in the building. Now remember, we're journalists, so we're supposed to be open and free speech, right? There's definitely some times, and not just in this one, where the client is actually the security risk, but they don't see themselves that way, right? Because this is their position, and I have to understand that and be able to deal with that. But you took it back to the people side, which I think is really important, because I'm full of journalists and immigrants, which really aren't super popular right now. And one of my high up people is Iranian, and he was an Iranian journalist that escaped from prison, made his way to the US, and I had to sit down with him and say, this is who's going to be here. There is a serious security risk to you for being in the building, probably ahead of time, because they know you're here. And I had to make arrangements with my board and say, hey, look, this guy can't be in the building for his safety and for our safety, because I'm not going to fight with the IRGC or any 3-letter agency during this period. So I think we have to be really cognizant that the events or the things that we do, even for like your situation, the stances that we take, create that ripple effect when it comes to security.
What would you want to know before recommending a change in security posture?
As soon as you started reading that, I said everything, right? Looking back to Bruce, I said everything. Because the reality of the situation for me is some of these people are clients, so I have to keep that in mind. But something I'd like to know ahead of time, something may literally change. There may be a bombing somewhere while this is going on and then immediately afterward. But that's not possible, right? So we have to take what intelligence we've got on the ground, and we have to trust the people like Bruce talks about to be able to give us good information. And I'm super lucky because my leadership says to me, it's your call. Now, remember, though, you live and die by your own sword, but in that way, I don't have anybody to fall back on, but as much as I can possibly know. But it has to be objective, and it has to be at least semi-verified.
Amazing. Thank you for keeping it tight. I'm going to transition over to David. How does an organization protect itself without reflexively saying no to employees, customers, markets, partnerships, or even countries?
Interesting. So I think from our perspectives in global security, the easiest part to do is to say no and lock everything down, right? Mm-hmm. This is where I think you see global security organizations being referred to as a cost center versus an enabler, though. Mm-hmm. So my job is to say yes, but, right? I walk into my CEO's office, I'll take you anywhere in the world, but you're doing it my way. We could sell this product to this country with these tariffs, but we need to take these precautions. Here's the guardrails that I need. So Mike, to answer your question, right, I think it's very people-centric of how we do it. So it's a culture of how do we connect our CISO to HR, to our business partners, to our leaders, to our engineers. You have to remember, we have both sides of the fence. We have tons of, I think we have over 14,000 engineers around the world. We manufacture in 8 different locations around the world. So we have an operations arm, and then we have an engineering arms. So we have to make sure that we intimately understand our business, and that's how we protect it. right? So as tariffs come, as Dubai shuts down, UAE, I can't travel through that anymore. If I don't know what's going on in the business, I can't protect it. So I'm very fortunate. I report to an amazing leader. He's our chief people officer, but he is probably the biggest nerd when it comes into get to know the business. You have to intimately know the business. And as soon as you do that, that makes conversations after the left of bang easier.
So you mentioned a lot of different people there. Who determines whether the organization can responsibly get to yes?
It's me, right? It's on your shoulders. Now I take consult with a lot of different folks. But as the #1 security person in the company, it comes to me. Now, I have a cyber arm to it. We have network operations centers. We have JSOCs and fusion centers around the world that help with that. It's just getting that right data of, hey, my background is emergency management. This is what we do. This is not what they do. So my statement always to my executives, you do what you do best, let me do what I do best. And this is it.
Great, thank you. RC, in the first hour of this, who should be in charge? Is this a security issue, legal issue, HR, comms, or executive leadership issue?
We're talking about the internal.
Yes.
Probably HR. Security needs to be very heavily involved, but the HR team, the one I work with now in particular, is very well aware and very tightly, very integrated in this, and they're monitoring it. They're the ones that are going to be typically the one that our CEO is going to go to and say what's going on here and why. If it evolves, which it quickly does, usually then you're going to they bring me in, and I'm also part of the legal team, so we're all kind of brought into this fairly quickly. But my experience is HR is your best initial contact, especially if it's dealing with your own employees. Additionally, they seem to have a lot more expertise, well, they do have a lot more expertise with the various laws around the world, because these things can happen not just in one geography. It's not just the United States, it can happen in Mexico and several other countries at the same time. And so you could have an online movement, if you will, that hits you in multiple locations. There's only one group that's going to be tied into all of those. That's probably going to be your HR team. Legal will understand the ramifications, but HR will actually be able to tell you about the players, which gets down to it. Knowing who these individual players are in an internal situation is very important. Many times they already know who they are and exactly how, what can help guide us on what to expect.
What if HR is a weak function or others are asserting themselves and say, hey, I have jurisdiction here?
Well, if others are asserting themselves, they're going to have, well, let's assume it's a weak function, which fortunately I do not have. I can tell you right now, this is the best HR team I've ever worked with. It would probably fall to legal, because the challenge here is that the rules are fairly complex. You can actually, I've seen situations where we had local laws in conflict with national laws, in conflict with countries. My company's based in Canada, with their internal regulations all at the same time. So figuring out which one of these is going to apply and how is going to require a fairly sophisticated legal mind, if your HR team can't take that lead.
Thank you. Bruce, you're a specialist in bringing in information. So during this time, information may be pouring in from security, cyber, legal, government affairs, HR, comms, supply chain, you name it, external intelligence. Who integrates it? How do you keep executives from receiving 6 incompatible versions of reality?
Yeah, and I think the conversations to this point to that is a real problem. Mm-hmm. They go to HR. HR has their information, they have their opinion or their assessment. That's one. They go to legal separately and they get a different set of information and a different assessment. That is the problem that management's dealing with. And I love this title of this panel, How to Stay on a Mission. When we're working with organizations, we have to quit working down in our silos. Mm-hmm. We need to go to the business and say, what is the overall objective of this business? More importantly, what are the value-generating business objectives that the board and the executives have agreed upon to execute, and by the way, get their bonus And our job should be collectively, all those things that you had, legal, regulatory, compliance, security, cyber, all of that should be coming together, looking at each one of those objectives and saying, what could impede the company achieving those objectives in our collective space, right? The entire enterprise. Our specialty is in the operational domain, but it's also, it bleeds into others. So we've got to start working together as a joint force. That's what we call the future operations model, not center. How do we have cross-functional teams that are clearly assigned to a mission and the objectives of that mission? They drive what questions do the management want about that, about achievement of that, and make sure we have intelligence requirements and indicators that support that collectively and come to them with one voice. That's what they want. And when we sit down at a table and say, look, we think your risk profile for this objective is now increasing. Are you comfortable with that, with where we sit right now? Or do you want us to look at ways to mitigate that? We've looked at it. We think it's about $7.5 million, and this is what we would do and why to bring that residual risk down. Does that work for you? And now it's a business discussion for them to decide collectively with one number, not 6 groups. The cyber guys want 2 and the physical guys want 1.7. And no, let's look at the requirement. What do we need to put into place to increase the certainty of achieving it? Make that decision. It's their final decision. We execute. That's the model that we're working through in the companies that I'm working with intimately.
Really interesting. Thank you for that. We have next question, 30 seconds, which will be strictly enforced. What is one capability, process, relationship, or decision rule that organizations should establish now before the next geopolitical issue reaches your front door? Let's just start closest to me, RC.
You need to have a solid cross-functional, as Bruce indicated, leadership. We call it LERC and CERC, local emergency response councils or committees, and corporate emergency response committees. We work with these all the time. It's very well developed. They're doing a very good job, but they already have these relationships established. If you don't have that, the first thing you're dealing with is the fact that nobody knows each other, or they know them in a very limited fashion. We start locally first, because most of the impact is typically fairly tactical initially. So I would say that.
One, perfect, right on time. Teresa.
So from my perspective, the reality is getting your board or whoever you will report to dialed into, it's going to hurt, right? The question is, how much hurt are you willing to take? And that's the risk assessment. For me, making decisions to say no at times actually creates another operational and reputational risk that I have to deal with. And to look at them and say, is the ROI worth it? And what's our decision on that? Because the brand reputation for a 108-year-old institution is important. And to do that, they have to believe in me, and they have to believe in the mission, and that I understand the business side of it, like Bruce said, when it comes to the money.
That was good. 1 minute and 3 seconds. Okay, David.
No, I think I think the easy answer is you have to have an established comms plan, right? You look at any major incident around the world. You go back in after actions, and communications broke down. We didn't know what to do that. And when I say comms plan, it's not are we using Signal versus WhatsApp or email, or is it in this text thread? It's understanding who owns the information, who needs to own the information, and when do they need to know it. And whether that's at, like RC said, like the local level, global level, or at the board level.
Thank you. And you get 45 seconds, Bruce. You can bring us home.
Study Stan McChrystal's Team of Teams. Apply it to your business, and you will succeed. And that's shared consciousness. Everyone around the table has the same access to information to look at it and fuse that organically and understand what actions to take. And with that, you need to have the ability to have single voice with leadership and not fragment what they're getting so that they're more confused and making bad decisions on bad and incomplete information. And that would be my 40 seconds.
1, 0. Let's have a big hand for these panelists for operating under extreme pressure. Thank you so much.